going to do a complete disassembly video for the Tokyo Marui Gen5 MOS. As you can see, this isn't an entirely stock one. It's got an acro plate, it's got JDG, magwell, threaded barrel, DCI, sights. What have I put inside it? It's got a steel guide rod. I've left a stock hop unit in there for demonstration purposes. It has also got the cow spring set. So yeah, I'll do a complete disassembly of this. We'll start with the top slide. Before we start, I would recommend you get yourself a half decent screwdriver set. I've got this. It does a whole bunch of Allen keys. It does cross heads. This was a lifesaver. This was from Lidl. This was a lifesaver because in my Tokyo Marui AK Storm there was a special screw, which I think pardon me, was that one. It may not be obvious, but it's a tri-point crosshead as opposed to a quad-point crosshead, and I couldn't find it anywhere, and just by dumb luck it was in this set in the middle aisle. So not particularly expensive, not the greatest tool set in the world, but worth it. You also need a long-handled crosshead screwdriver. I would highly recommend a set of forceps. I'll explain that later. Set of pin punches. Oops. There you go. And a hammer for the pin punches, and then one of these pin punch blocks, whatever you want to call it, is good, just because then you don't ruin your table. So yeah, if you have all of those, then you shouldn't struggle. Set of pliers is always useful. So yeah, right, let's get started. Slide off. I'm going to start with the top half first. I'll take things apart and then I'll probably put things back together just so I don't have loads of bits lying around. So maybe I won't, we'll see. The spring guide has a little catch here that comes off, and then your buffers go out there. Take out your inner spring, and then your, I guess they call it a bird cage, and your outer spring, the whatever you want to call that, and the guide rod itself. So to put it back together, really easy. So guide rod, the little cap that goes in first, make sure it's facing the right way. The cup, the inside of the cup is there. You then put in the big spring, the bird cage, slide that all the way down, inside spring, there you go, and your buffers, and then your little cap. If you've done that all correctly, looks like that. So that's the first bit. Let's take the barrel out. On the stock one you won't need to do the thread cover. So that's your inner and outer barrel. Take it apart. I would suggest holding it, thumb push, pops out. Be careful. On the Marui ones and the detonator ones, they're fine, they're not sharp. On the WeTech ones here, the bits are razor sharp. You end up shredding your thumbs. It's horrendous. It's a teaser for next time. Okay, so to take this apart, quite easy. There are 3 screws, 1, 2, 3. You take them apart in this order, 1, 2, 3. So first one comes out quite easily. You then remove the dials and then screw 2. Screw 3. Important small detail. I'm not sure if you can see, there's an O-ring just there. Make sure you don't lose it. It makes your life a lot easier for adjusting the dial. That comes out. There's the little hop arm. There's your barrel. So to put it back together, you make sure that the barrel goes in with the notches lined up, and obviously that notch lined up. You then fit your hop arm. It goes in, this is similar to the Gen 4s and the G19s. So I'm going to do this in a way that is visually easier. So there and there. And then I'll flip that round. That goes in quite nicely like that. It's a little bit of twisting. If you look at the screws, they are the same length, so it doesn't matter which one you put in where. However, it's obviously significantly different to the last screw you're going to put in, so just be aware of that. So these go in. 1, 2. Always make sure that your hop rubber is seated properly. You should find that the hop rubber goes right up to the edge of the lip. So then fit in the larger wheel first. I dial mine all the way up to start with. And then your next one. There you go. And screw. There you go. There we go. So that's your hop unit done. This is a detonator barrel, so it has this extra spring. The stock barrel doesn't really make a huge bit of difference to how you install it, other than just be aware of it. To put it back together, little tap, and then you put it back in the slide. Now I'm going to take apart the slide, put all of that there for now. So first thing to do is remove these 2 screws at the back. These hold in the MOS plate. They also hold in the blowback unit. There we go. See, MOS plate comes off straight away. Tap out, screws there. Don't lose them. So now we're left with this. I'll do the front sight first, which is the easiest to remove. So all of these Marui slides are designed exactly the same, so they're a like compression fit. So to get to the sight post, you've got to remove this metal piece here. So can I do this in a way that visually makes sense? So you separate the slide slightly using your thumb and finger, so like that movement, and then this just pops out. Easy enough. That exposes the front post. And then you need a smaller screwdriver. which is why this is useful. There you go. Wrong size again. Get it right one day. Jewelers. There you go. And there you go. As a side note, these are 3mm shims. They're 3mm by inner diameter 3mm, exterior diameter 6mm, I think, and 1/2 mm thick. These are really good for fitting in the sight post here where there's a large square. A lot of the time these aftermarket screws are not big enough. As you can see, they're sort of, you can post them through quite easily, so they're not actually going to hold the sight in place. So as a result, you need one of these 3x6 washers. Let's put that over there. Okay, now this is the bit that I really hate. So there is a steel slide stop plate here. Again, with your jeweler's screwdriver. There's a little screw in here. Apologies for the cough, recovering. There you go. It's quite a long screw. And it comes out like that. So, relatively long screw. The plate's there. It comes out in sort of like a, I guess like a guillotine action, or like a cutting action, like that. Okay, so this is the bit I really don't enjoy. Actually, side note, these 2 marks here. So this is a second-hand pistol. I've bought this off of someone and fixed it because it was broken. One of the really common problems I'm seeing with the Gen 5 MOS is that people are not reading the manual. And as a result, they're using screws that are way too long for the MOS plate, and then it drives in and dents the nozzle housing. This is one of them. I've seen at least 2 others that I've either fixed for people or can't fix for them that have this same problem because people are not following the manual, not using the manual. Doesn't affect the performance for mine, but I've seen some where it's completely ruined the nozzle, and the nozzle's useless now. So just be warned, use short screws. I would always recommend you fit the sight to the MOS plate before you put in the MOS plate here, because at least then you'll see whether the screws are protruding. This clips in, so it goes like that. So there's absolutely no excuse. Right, so now this is the bit I don't enjoy. All Marui slides are designed like this, all the Glock slides are designed like this. So you've got to basically bend the slide out and then push the blowback unit out. With the older generations where you don't have this MOS plate, it was a nightmare, and you had to take the rear sight out and then sort of with one hand part the slide and with the other hand sort of try and poke through here with a screwdriver. Slightly easier with this because you've got all the space to apply pressure. You've just got to be careful. I would really recommend not using tools, because if you use tools you're going to damage the slide and stuff. Okay, so thumbs here, fingers here, pull and push. I might have to speed this up. There you go. There you go. We'll talk about that later. So this is the little sort of MOS catch, as it were. There's a tiny little spring there. Don't lose it. this slides out, so these two make a full piece. And then you can get to your rear sights. There's two screws here. There you go. We'll talk about that later. Let's put these away. Right, so nozzle, blowback unit and nozzle. So it's a little bit cryptic to start with, and I would really recommend that you don't start pulling things and tugging things, because inside here is a return spring, and if you start like trying to pull things to inquire and figure out why, you stretch the spring and the spring becomes useless. So the easiest way to get the nozzle apart is there is a retention pin there. You see it there? You look for whichever end looks more curved, which I think is that end. There you go. If you see, there's a knurling on one side, so one side will look less round than the other. There's a little notch there, which is important. We'll talk about that later. You take it apart. There you go. Valve spring, valve, nozzle, nothing else to it. Blowback housing. To get rid of that, or get that spring out, this is why you need the long handled screwdriver. It goes in here, unscrew, and eventually pops out. There you go. Lose that. The piston lid just pulls out. It's quite easy to get out, he says. There you go. And this top bit comes out with these two screws. Try and get that out. There you go. So that all slides out. I took that bit off as well. That just slides over there, held in place. And that is a one piece, which is quite nice. So to put it back together, it says clumsy hands. Put it all back together is you slide that bit in. That bit in. My hands are greasy now because of this, so there you go. Can drop that in there. That bit in there. You only need to hand tighten all of this stuff as well. There's no point in over tightening it, you'll just damage something. That just pushes on. There you go. All good. Right, I'll put that down for a moment. Actually, spring. So ideally what you want to do is, for later on, you want to make sure that this ring here is pointing to 12 o'clock on the blowback unit, in the housing. And the reason for that is later on you're going to have to do some not so fun twisting and poking of holes and stuff like that, and it'll become obvious later on, but make sure that's at 12 o'clock or thereabouts. Don't over tighten this screw either, just gently, because what you'll end up doing is chewing up the spring at the bottom if you over tighten it. Right, that goes in there. They've made this nozzle valve non-rotating, which is quite nice. Alright, so now this is the bit that I'm going to struggle to explain to everyone. So, what you need to do to keep this retained is, let's find the right tool, there you go. So, you need the pin, this metal pin, to go through here and hold the nozzle in place. So it's going to be like that, but inside the nozzle. I've just dropped the spring. So the trick to it, and I apologise if this is not going to look very obvious. I'll have to look back on this and see how I can make it better. He says I'm not able to get this spring out now. There we go. So, there you go. It goes in there. So what you're going to have to do is you end up sticking, your, what are we going to call it, your pin head in here to hold down the valve. You then stick the nozzle back on, and then what you're going to have to do is look through this gap and try and catch the spring and bring it up. What you can always do to make life easier is if you put the pin in on the side already, then it's held in place. You don't have to worry so much. So what I tend to do is I use this pinhead piece to find the spring, and then you push it through. Make sure it's sat in place, and then just make sure that the spring is on the notch in there. So I apologise, I don't know how I'm going to show that in a way that makes sense to everyone, but you basically got to use the hole there to try and loop the spring through onto here, and then use that to guide the spring onto the pin. And once that's all in place, easy. So now reassembly, I recommend you do the sights first. So if we do the rear sight first, there's a little notch here that it sits in quite nicely. These are DCI luminous sights. They're okay. I much prefer the Pro Arms ones, but the Pro Arms ones are extortionately expensive and hard to find, so these are great if you can find them. Screw goes back in there. The front sight goes in, so that pops onto there. This goes here. Oops. What you can do, not the intended use for these, but if you pick up the washer with your forceps, drop them on, drop that in, and then screw it all in place. Be careful about over tightening these front post sights for two reasons. First of all, a lot of the screws are just terrible, so they strip really easily. And second of all, you can round the top of there really easily, and the screws are impossible to find, so you end up costing yourself money unnecessarily. This goes back in here, so you just pop it in, makes a good click, won't move, that's fine. So now the blowback housing, but first we put this bit in here. That's the bit with the spring for the MOS plate. It's a bit pointless, to be honest, because most of the aftermarket designs don't even use it, but fine. Then you put in this other artificial plate. Oh, you know what, because I'm doing it at an angle, I've just knocked that out. Let's drop that in from the back. This is another way you can do it, is you drop it in. I'm going to use the forceps so that it's easier to see. So you drop it in there and you push this down. Now that's secure. Now blowback unit just snaps in place, he says. There you go. Sometimes what you need to do is move this spring about. So that spring that holds the MOS catch in place sometimes gets in the way of the blowback unit. So sometimes you just have to use a screwdriver to push it back a little bit. And as you see, it all sits flush, so it's good. Your little side catch plate and the tiny little screw that's really easy to lose. I've ended up buying a bunch of these as spares because I kept losing them. Put that in. Again, gently hand tighten. You're only tightening into plastic, so don't thread it and then mess yourself up. MOS plate. There you go. And then your MOS plate screws. I apologise if the way that I've done this doesn't really make sense, but there's so many parts to this pistol that if I took it apart completely and then reassembled it sort of start to finish, I just have so many parts and I don't particularly want to lose anything, so doing it sort of major component at a time is easier. Make sure these are decently tight. Slide, barrel. And to get this in place, easiest way to do it is pull the bird cage back, put it in place, and then let the spring do its job, and it should all nicely sit like that. There you go. So that was the easy bit. So I realised after filming this and doing the complete disassembly that the whole video is about an hour and a quarter, so I'm going to have to do it and split into two videos. At the point you're watching this, I will have just done the top slide. We'll have disassembled this half. The next video I will be disassembling the frame, so it'll be very clumsily edited in. Future couple of videos is going to be some Wii Tech slides, hopefully a bit of tech work. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll be uploading the second half to this very soon. Thank you.